Hi, and a warm welcome. My name is Ian Mack, and in this session, we're going to talk about ballet stories as part of our journey into the arts and our self-learning. Of course, ballet is dance, and an awful lot of people don't know a lot about ballet, except that they might have seen one or two. They probably don't know the stories that are being danced to or interpreted, and they just simply enjoy it because it's a spectacle. The music's lovely and it was a nice thing to do for an evening. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to advance my own knowledge of ballet. I wanted to find out what the stories were for each of the major famous ballets, and I wanted to know more about the history of ballet so that I had a greater understanding and appreciation of the art form itself. And of course, ballet is intrinsic to the arts. It's one of the great fine arts of our civilization. It brings together the physicality of the human being together with our ability to interpret music, to use dance as a language, to speak to an audience, to tell stories. But then on top of that, we can add sets, the grand sets, the gorgeous costumes, the theatrical nature, the acting, the lighting, the music itself, of course, everything. It's a complete spectacle. It's the perfect, in my view, evening out as an art form. But before we get there, I just wanted to talk about, I could never dance myself. I mean, my God, as a teenager, the idea that I had to get on a dance floor and dance, it was just back in those days in the early 80s it was horrific. I just didn't have the skills. But I remember in 1986, one night on in the UK on Channel 4's program Dance on 4, they showed Hail the New Puritan by the dancer Michael Clark. Now, Michael Clark was a young avant-garde dancer, very much engaged in the punk new wave tradition of the early 80s, and the music to Hail the New Puritan was by Mark E. Smith and the Fall. And so suddenly we've got something brand new, something that felt fresh, it felt different, it felt contemporary, it felt young, it felt like something that I wanted to see. It reminds me later on when I saw the ballet Edward Scissorhands, different, but still something new, something contemporary. And I think that's what we see in ballet today. We see the classical ballet companies reinterpreting old classical ballets, reinventing them, bringing them back to new audiences. But we also see new dance, new ballet. And so really today, I think that the whole ballet art form has been refreshed. It's something exciting. It's something to get involved with. And that's why I personally wanted to understand more about this art form, and which is why I decided to record the stories behind the 80 most popular and performed ballets in the world today, and you will find them shortly in my channel. So do like and subscribe so that you can keep up to date as I release them. I will also be doing the same with opera, but I will do a separate video about that. Before we go any further though, so Hail the New Puritan was a big deal to me. It kind of got me excited, and do go and look it up on YouTube. There are either segments or the whole Hail to the New Puritan available on YouTube, and definitely worth searching for. I watched a section just before and found it as exciting as it did back in 1986. So thank you, Michael, for that. I really appreciate it. In the same way, I suppose, that Nigel Kennedy got me suddenly excited in the 80s about classical music. There was something new. There was something that related to me. And so I don't think that we should always take all these art forms and kind of just think of them as classical legacies. They're not. They're there to be reinvented. They're there for everybody to enjoy. They're there for all audiences. these art forms are not just for a highbrow limited audience, they're for all. So if we think back to the history of ballet, where did it come from? Well, it originates in the 13th, 1400s in Italy, the city-states, think the Medicis, and they would have grand, magnificent celebrations in which we would find dance, song, and poetry. So I guess that was the real origins. But in 1400, there is to this day a handwritten manuscript that's written by Domenico of Piacenza. And in that, it's a dance manual, a handwritten dance manual. And in that, Domenico, he differentiates between danza, which is a single rhythm dance, and ballo, which has varied rhythms. So for me, that's kind of the real origins of ballet, a dance with varied rhythms, 600 and something years ago. However, keep swallowing here. In 1533, Catherine de' Medici from Italy married French King Henry II and moved over to the French court, and she brought with her that Italian dance tradition, thus establishing ballet within the French court. Now, the kings that followed, Henry III, Louis XIII, Louis XIV, all great dancers, all embraced dance and ballet within the court. It was used as a way to show skill, to announce power. We can think of the same as Henry VIII, because Henry VIII in England also was apparently a renowned dancer. In France, though, this is the origins of ballet, and in 1713 a permanent professional dance school was established, and it was really the founding basis of what today we know of as the Paris Opera Ballet. From this point onwards, the ballet advanced as a true art form. But in the late 1700s, we see the rise of ballet d'action. And ballet d'action saw ballet established as an art form in its own right, rather than just an accompaniment to the music. This leads us into the traditional classical ballets of the 1800s. I mean, a lot of the early ballets of the 1700s were lost. Because the dances weren't written down, they were handed from lead dancer to lead dancer, and occasionally they weren't passed on for a range of reasons. And so some ballets, the music exists, and so they had to be re-choreographed, or they are being re-choreographed today as something new. Whereas opera was scored, and therefore the music could be passed on. So in the 1800s, we find the romantic ballets of Paris, and then Milan, and later in the century in St. Petersburg and Russia and so on. And London, we find ballet developing further. And by the end of the 1800s, of course, we have superb pieces like Swan Lake, which we, of course, still enjoy today. So we have this kind of 600-year dance tradition, but in the ballet that we know, then I guess that we tend to reach back to the late 1700s, early 1800s and onwards for our classical ballet, alongside contemporary ballet that is now being performed across the world in the great opera ballet houses. So I think if we understand the core stories of each of the ballets, it's going to encourage us to go to a local opera house, to go and see a ballet, enjoy it for the story as well as for the dance, to feel more comfortable. And I think that's a great starting point in engaging with this truly superb art form. Enjoy ballet stories.